At last, the time has come to do the fabled deck profile.
Grade 3s that I love so dear, bring the power of a new era to me!
What is going on, guys? This is Mack from Team Card Fighters United coming at you with a new playmat to fit the new deck that I am currently deck profiling, which is my Coral deck. Now, I have wanted to build Coral for a very long time, even before she got support. So when she got support, I was extremely excited, but I was broke. So I was trying really hard to build the deck with scraps. Basically, I had the starter and a couple crits, and I was working off that. But the deck is finally done. I've been working on it since the support came out, and I'm really excited to share what I ended up coming up with. So let's go ahead and get started. So before I start, hang on, I'm kind of sorting my strides because I forgot to do it before I started the video, so I'm doing it real quick. Okay, we're good to go. So, before I start, I just want to go ahead and say that of all the Bermuda units, Coral has to be my favorite, just because, honestly, her playstyle is so vastly different from pretty much everything else in Bermuda that it's really enjoyable for me. Alright, let's stop talking and actually get into the deck profile. So my starter is Angelic Star Coral. It is a starter for the ride chain. Pretty simple. When the grade 1, which is Fresh Star Coral, rides her, you can check the top 7 for the grade 2 or 3, which is Aurora Star or Shiny Star Coral. Add them to your hand and shuffle. You cannot search for the cross ride, which kind of sucks because it's like the card you want to ride into, but it's okay because usually it helps you set up for your grade 2 turn, which actually helps a lot. Its second skill, which I never use, and I don't think anybody should with the current way the deck builds, is that if you don't ride Fresh Star Coral onto this, you can call it to a rearguard circle, which honestly isn't worth it in the sense that the stride benefits from Coral in the soul, and she is a Coral, so she counts as a Coral in the soul, which will pump the Coral stride, and really the 10k that you get from bouncing it into your hand if you ride wrong isn't really worth it versus the pump you get from having it in the soul. So I usually just keep it in the soul no matter what. So there's that. Now let's go on to grade 3s. I run 3 Aurora Star Coral. This is the original grade 3 of the deck. Her skill is kind of bad, but I'll read it anyway. Her skill is Limit Break 4, Counterblast 2. When it attacks a Vanguard, you Soul Charge. Yeah, you Soul Charge 1, choose a Bermuda Triangle Rearguard, and return it to your hand, and then she gets +5. So that's honestly not worth the Counterblast 2. So I usually don't use the skill of this. I usually just use it to fuel the cross ride. And it also gets +1 if it has the grade 2 in the soul, just like any other ride chain. So there's that. Next grade 3 we run is for Shangri-la Star Coral. This is the cross ride of the deck. It's very good. It's good against grade 2 game, and it's good if you just don't want to stride yet. Its skill is obviously if you have Aurora Star Coral in the soul, it gets +2. Its effect is Limit Break 4, Counterblast 1, and Soul Blast 1. Choose a Bermuda Rearguard and return it to your hand, and then she gets +3. Then you can choose a card in your hand with Coral in its card name and put it in the soul. If you do, you draw 2 cards. So the Limit Break itself can actually fuel the cross ride, as well as give you a little bit of defense, which is what Coral is the best at. She's got really good defense. So yeah, I run 4 of her for the Coral name and to be able to fuel the cross ride as well as have a 13k base on my opponent's turn, which is very nice. So, grade 2s, we run 4 of Shiny Star Coral. This is the Ride Chain grade 2, so it gets +1 if the grade 1 is in the soul. And its effect is, if it hits while it's on Vanguard, you can bounce a unit in the front row. And if the grade 1 is in the soul, then you can also bounce a unit in the back row. I usually hit with it because I always call a 7k behind it, so that the front row will, it'll hit for 17. And usually that's either a 10k to guard or it's a 10 and a 5 to guard, and most people don't want to do that, so they just let it hit, and then I bounce 2 units, which allows me to pressure a little bit turn 2. So very good card. I definitely recommend running all 4. Next I run Active Pink Lorena. This is one of the cards that came into the new set. It's one of the supporters. Her skill is when it attacks a Vanguard, if you have a grade 3 or greater Coral, then she gets +2, so it's an 11k attacker. And then it's got a skill in the soul, which is Counterblast 1. If you have a grade 3 or greater Coral, you can call it to rear guard from the soul, but first you bounce it. And then you choose a card. Hang on. Oh, yeah. You just Counterblast 1. If it's in the soul and you have a grade 3 or greater Coral, you can call it out to rear guard and then soul charge 1. So it helps you fuel your field if you soul charge these, which you soul charge a lot with this deck. So it's a very good card in the soul. I usually don't use its soul skill actually because I like my counterblasts. So I usually just keep it out of the soul. But if it does go in the soul and I need a good attacker, I will use the skill because usually I have the feel too. Next card in the deck is Magical Charge Vita. She came out in this set and she's a very, very good card. Her skill is she has Harmony on Vanguard or Rearguard, and then her ability is G-Break 1, Soul Blast 1, and return it to the hand. At the beginning of each turn's main phase, you can pay that cost. If you do, you choose a grade 1 or less card from your hand, call it to an open Rearguard circle, and then if you have a grade 4 or greater Vanguard, you countercharge 1. So I prefer to use the countercharge ability, so I always use it on one of my turns, so that I can both call a grade 1 out from my hand and countercharge 1 because this deck likes to counterblast. So it really does help. It helps keep the consistency pretty decent. Plus it's a Harmony card, and one of the strides I run in this kind of needs some Harmony stuff, so run 3 of that. On to the grade 1s, we run 4 of the grade 1 Coral, Fresh Star Coral. She's basically just a ride chain fixer. If you ride her on the starter, you search the top 7 for one of these or these, and if you ride any grade 2 that's not the grade 2 Coral on top of her, then you search the top 7 for the grade 2 Coral and then ride it. So she is a very good fixer of the deck. She helps fix she helps basically fix everything that's wrong with it for the most part. Let me put the starter over here so you guys can see it. She basically helps fix the ride chain. If you don't ride her, that's fine, because there's another card in here that you will ride instead that will help the ride chain immensely, and that card is Admire Successor Lyrica. So Lyrica is a very good card if you don't have Fresh Star Coral, because her effect is when she is placed on Vanguard or Rearguard Circle, you can check the top 5 cards of the deck for a grade 1 or 2 Coral, and then put it into your hand and choose a card from your hand and put it into the soul. So say you ride this and then check top 5, there's a chance that you'll run into one of these, usually I do, and you can just put it into your hand and then put it into the soul, and then you can ride the grade 2 afterwards and you still have all the effects live. So Lyrica is a very good counter to not having the grade 1 Coral in your hand. Sometimes it doesn't work. In fact, it's often that it doesn't work, which is why I only run 3, because there are only 8 targets that it can search for. But it still helps, and if you have enough Corals in the soul already, you can still use the skill just to thin out the deck and make it easy to pull triggers, because she'll basically take normal units out of the deck. So it makes it so that there are less normal units in there and more triggers. So It's very nice. Next, grade 1 is obviously a perfect guard. We run the Harmony perfect. Oh, that's not a perfect guard. We run a Harmony perfect guard because, like I said before, one of the strides in this deck really benefits from having Harmony on the board, and it's really nice to have this on the board. Plus, usually I just bounce it because its skill is that at the end of the turn, I believe it's end of the turn. Yeah, at the end of each turn, you can drop a card, and if this card is in Harmony, then you just add it to your hand. So if you need to call this out to get Harmony live, it's totally fine because you can just bounce it back to your hand afterwards, and it's pretty decent. Next, we run 3 Stride Enablers, which is Shangri-la. She is essential in this deck because this deck requires a lot of striding. While the cross ride is good, there's not a lot of real presence until you stride, so you need these. And also, you usually want to keep your grade 3 corals in your hand, so it's very good to run these. And then last grade 1 is 2 Garland Blossom Anya, however the heck you freaking pronounce it, it's weird. Her skill is Vanguard or Rearguard, Harmony, and G-Break 1. If she becomes in Harmony, then she can give another unit Harmony, which really helps. Like, it honestly helps a lot with one of the strides that I run in this deck. And then the next skill is Counterblast 1 and Rest Her. If she gives 5,000 power to every unit in the same column or row as her, if they're all in Harmony. So, say she's behind your Vanguard and your whole board is Harmony, you can Counterblast and Rest Her, and you'll give plus 5,000 to the unit here, here, and your Vanguard, because it gives power to everything that's in the same column and row. But the wording of it is so that I don't understand the wording, but the ruling is that it does count for all of them that are in the same column and row, but it says or. I still don't get it, but whatever. Let's go ahead and clean up this, because that's the end of the actual main deck, except for triggers, which I'm going to show off in just a second. Go ahead and just clean this up real fast. Alright, on to triggers. We run 4 Rico. Honestly, my favorite heal. Run 4 Michiru, favorite crit in the entire game. And then we run 6 more crits, so we run 10 crit and 2 Heartful Ale Fundy. A lot of people that play Coral recommend not to run any draws at all, but personally I feel like running 2 is okay, because sometimes you just don't draw what you need to draw, and that draw trigger can help immensely, and it has helped immensely sometimes, so it really just depends. Also, she's the Margle clone, so that's also very nice. It can pump up columns a little bit, make them a little bit more devastating, which is very good. So, yeah, I'd run 2 Fundy, even though a lot of people tell you not to. I still do it because it's worked for me. So, alright, on to the strides. Obviously, it's a Coral deck, so we are going to run 4 Frontier Star Coral. Her effect is really simple. Essentially, when she attacks, you Counterblast 1 and Soul Charge 1. And for every Coral that's in your Soul, you can bounce that many units. So if you have 5 Corals in your Soul, you can bounce your whole field. She gets plus 5,000 power for every unit bounced like that. And then if there are 2 or more face-up Corals in the G-Zone, then you can draw a card and call 2 units to separate rear guards. So she is very good even as a first stride, because she pumps really hard and she baits perfect guards out, which is nice, as well as letting you have a big field and then just bring it back to your hand, no problem. So very good card. She definitely helped fuel this deck and make it a little bit more viable. It's got a little bit of a kick to it now. So very good card. Definitely made the deck worth running. Next, we run a bunch of one-ofs, like a lot of one-ofs. We run 5 one-ofs. So we run one of Morris. It's on place. You bounce 2 units. These cards are really just there to flip with this and another card that I'll get into in a second. So we've got one of this. We've got one Somni, which is on hit, bounce a card, and then call a card with +3. It's, again, just there to fuel these. We've got Elprana, which is there to bounce 2 units whenever you feel like it, if you really want to, which helps you spam Lyrica if you want to. But again, it's usually there to fuel these. Then we've got Madu, which is actually there for the grade 3 Aurora Star Coral, because we don't, it's a 10k grade 3, so that does help. And then we run a card that we do not use to fuel these guys, and it's actually really, really devastating in this deck, but I will get into it in a second. So the next Stride we run is 3 Celebrate Voice Loris. She is one of my finisher cards, and she's very good. She's actually, in my opinion, just because of the deck I'm running, this card, in my opinion, is better than Olivia in this deck. So her effect is Harmony. Once per turn, G-Break 2, you counterblast 1 and choose a face-down card from your G-Zone and turn it face-up. This is Act, by the way. You can choose the same number of rear guards as the number of face-up cards in your G-Zone and return them to your hand. And then she gets the ability that when it attacks a Vanguard, if all of the units on your board are in Harmony, then you can choose 3 units and they get plus 5,000 power, and then Loris gains a crit. So Loris is a very good pusher. That 5,000 power push honestly makes her better than Olivia in my opinion, but in terms of the setup is what makes most people think that Olivia is still better. With this deck, I usually get that setup just because it's easy to pull it off, but I do see why people still want to run Olivia, because Olivia's pretty easy and straightforward to get off, and Loris takes a little bit more work. But with Anya, because like I said, when she goes in Harmony, she gives something else Harmony, it makes it really easy to set it up, because you really only need 2 Harmony units in your hand in order to do it then. So it's pretty easy. Even if you have 1 card in your hand, you can still set this up, because she has Harmony herself. So if you call something behind her, she will get Harmony, and all of the units on your board will be in Harmony. So it doesn't specify that you have to have a full field, which a lot of people thought. It just says that all of the units on your field need to be in Harmony. So if you use this card and you have a very low hand, it can still do some serious damage, because it gets the pump regardless of if you have a full field or not. As long as everything is in Harmony, she gets really big. Now on to G-Guards, we run 2 Nasha. It's one of the easiest ones to pull off. If you have a card with the same grade as a unit on your field in your hand, you can reveal it and it gets plus 5 shield. So it's pretty simple. That does include the Vanguard. For a while there, I didn't realize that it included the Vanguard, but it does. So it's very nice. And then I run 2 Hand-in-Hand Leona. Her skill is when she's placed, you can bounce a card from your hand and then call a card from your hand to the Guardian Circle, which does evade stuff like Tom and other units like that. And if the unit that you call to the Guardian Circle has the same name as the unit that you bounced, that unit gets another 5,000 shield. So if you happen to have a trigger on your field, which actually with Coral, since she bounces a lot of stuff, sometimes I actually do have a trigger on the field. You can use this skill and you get a 30k Generation Guard, which is very, very nice. So Leona's pretty decent. And now the last card of the deck, and the powerhouse for late game. If I don't want to go into Loris, I go into this guy. You know him, you love him, our Lord and our Savior, Snow Element Blizza. His skill is Counterblast 1 and flip a G unit over. When he attacks, he gets plus 5,000 for every face-up G unit. Usually, I will go into Coral and flip a Coral. Then I'll go into Coral again and flip something else over. Then I'll go into Coral again and flip something else over. Then I'll go into Loris. By the time I've done this, I've probably G-guarded 2 or 3 times. And then I use his skill. He usually gets up to 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55 extra power just from himself. So it is a very, very, very viable stride in this deck, and I love it to death in this deck. So that's going to do it for this deck profile, guys. I hope you enjoyed. This playmat is courtesy of Team G-Reverse, so go check them out. They're kind of losers, but, you know, they make good products. So, this has been Mack from Team Card Fighters United, and remember, meta is disgusting.